on the all-new WandaVision Halloween Special Spooktacular. We will answer your questions with more questions. What did you think of this 6th episode of WandaVision? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk review for WandaVision Episode 6. I really do feel like these episodes are getting better and better. Where I felt kind of slow to warm up to this show in the beginning, I'm on fire right now. I think this is incredibly interesting, and I think they're doing a good job raising the right kind of questions and keeping me hooked and invested. For instance, bringing Pietro back. Ending Episode 5 with that was brilliant, because it is Peter from the X-Men universe and not the Pietro we know from this universe. Therefore, Episode 5 not only ended on this huge cliffhanger, but it ended on this, is this the introduction to the multiverse? It also ended looking at Wanda like she had this shock on her face. She didn't do this. In her own mind, in her own consciousness, at the end of Episode 5, it was kind of emphasized she did not intentionally call him forth and bring him to the door, which is fascinating to me because there's a lot of weird, crazy implications as we get into this. Because when this episode picked up, first off, I loved having Pietro in here. I thought he was hysterical. His relationship with the twins was great, and how he took the one twin, and what's their names, Billy and Tommy, and no, I can't remember which one is which, so I'm kind of like Pietro and that, getting confused about that. But I loved it when they were going trick-or-treating. And he and the one twin were running around super fast, stealing everybody's candy, covering everybody in silly string, and smashing all the jack-o'-lanterns. Like, all of that was hilarious. So I liked his personality. I thought he was a good addition to the cast. And so he does, like, bring things up a level, but he also brings it up in another level in the whole mystery department. For instance, Wanda and Pietro are walking and talking there while they're going trick-or-treating, and she's trying to test him. She's trying to figure out, like, do your childhood memories match up with mine? And he catches her on these, like, hey, are you testing me? And me, I'm like, yes, she's testing you. Now answer the questions, and it better be good answers, sir, because I am incredibly confused right now. And instead of answering the question, she just calls her on that. And then she asks him point blank, why do you look different? So either way, she does not seem to be consciously bringing him into this. She was not consciously changing his appearance, raising the question, is this really Peter from the X-Men Marvel Universe? And his answer is, you tell me. If I had found Shangri-La, I wouldn't want to be reminded of my past either. So he puts it back on her? Seriously? Because his very presence seems to unsettle her and make her feel like maybe she's a little bit out of control. And yet there he is putting it on her, like maybe it's her subconscious. Maybe she changed his appearance subconsciously. It just raises more questions.
How'd you even do all this?
I don't know how I did it.
And then a little bit later, it just continues to get more and more interesting because Pietro and her are talking, and he calls out the fact that, yeah, he's fulfilling that stereotypical crazy uncle role in a sitcom. He's come in, he's upsetting the family balance, but in kind of a good way, and adding a good new chemistry to everything. And so he calls her out on that. He's like, but that's what you wanted, isn't it? And then later, as they're sitting on the hay bales, the way he talks to her, I'll tell you what he sounds like to me. He sounds like an undercover cop, trying to probe and get answers to questions without tipping his hand. For instance, these kids come running by, and Vision earlier had been asking her, where's all the children in the neighborhood? There's a playground, but every time I walk by it and go to work, there are no children. Where are all the other children in this neighborhood? So Pietro asks that very same question. He goes, I assume you just have them asleep, tucked in their bed somewhere, because you've handled the ethical implications of the scenario as best you can. What is that? It really feels like he's doing some probing for some answers right now. He even brings up some stuff referencing Age of Ultron, like you've come a long way from getting into people's heads with nightmares and waving your fingers with red wavy lines. Like you've come a long way with this. So it really feels like he's probing a little bit, that he's trying to get some answers himself. So could this be Peter from another universe, rewritten under this bubble, trying to figure out how and why he's here? What about the fact that he brings up that the last thing he remembers is being shot in the street? And it's weird how he says that, because it's specific enough that it fits what happened in Age of Ultron, but also it's also kind of vague. And so he says he remembers being shot in the street, and then he hears Wanda's voice calling out to him. And he knew she needed him. And so he came to answer that call. So this is all really interesting, and it's just adding more and more questions. And then she has that weird vision flash of him as zombie Pietro with the same bullet holes in his body that he had in Age of Ultron, even though it's the Peter from X-Men. So it's all incredibly strange as it begins to build. But then when crisis happens and the one twin comes running in and saying, Dad is in trouble, Vision is in trouble, and Pietro, he stands up, and this is probably the stupidest thing he said in this episode, is he says,
Hey, don't sweat it, sis. It's not like your dead husband could die twice.
and it's amazing how quickly and willingly she blasted him. It was instinct, yes, and she was probably offended he said that stupid thing he said, but it is interesting, isn't it? That quickly she blasted him. And so it makes you wonder what is going on. There is something about his presence that does unsettle her. And his presence does add this whole other element of mystery. Because I am questioning whether it's multiverse. Like, I don't know now if this is our introduction to the multiverse. Either way, this is incredibly strange. So what do you think? Do you think it's Peter from the X-Men universe? Do you think it's Pietro from the MCU? Do you think he's something else altogether? Let's talk about that in the comments. The other thing interesting is Vision. Like, he's spending this episode trying to figure out his world. And I liked it because finally he's going to the outer fringes of the town. And it's interesting because it's just, the further out he goes away from the center, the less people are animated. And they're just sort of standing there. I felt bad for that lady who's like trying to hang up the ghost on the clothesline. And she just kept repeating that same motion over and over with that tear rolling down her cheek. Like she's just utterly trapped and tormented by the fact that she's trapped. Her husband behind her just picking up the pumpkin thing, putting it down, picking it back up, and then putting it down. So kind of stuck in this repeat as if they're Sims and they're on the outer fringes where the focus isn't there. So they're part of the world, but there's not as much effort being put into them. And that's when he finds Agnes. It seems like she's trying to escape. And the further she got away from the center of the focus, the more like those other people she's become. And now she's just sitting out there, just sitting in her car. So when Vision wakes her up and she starts pleading for help, like, oh my gosh, you're the Vision. You're an Avenger. Are you here to help us? And he goes, well, yes, I am Vision and I am trying to help you. What's an Avenger?
I did.
No. Why would you think that?
Because you are.
And unlike the way the trailer's cut, she doesn't crack up laughing after she says this to him. In fact, we see her afraid and fearful and just saying there's no hope, that they're trapped and there's no escape. Now, there's some things about Marvel Comics, a lot of things actually, that I'm pretty ignorant about. Such as Agnes apparently is a character who is a witch, a powerful one, and a mentor to Wanda, and is connected to this villain Mephisto. Now, I don't know anything about Mephisto, I don't know anything about Agnes, and I'm enjoying that right now. I know nothing about any of that. I mention it because I can't help but find certain headlines and certain theories. And so I'm watching this and I'm wondering, does that mean Agnes is really just playing along and she's pretending to be panicked here? Or in this interpretation, is she really just somebody who lives in this town and is caught under this whole thing? And so it's kind of interesting to have this in my peripheral vision and to know what other people are thinking. I like not knowing for sure because I'm really enjoying this surprise. Hayward definitely has some other agenda going on. He was definitely looking for a reason to fire Monica, and he fired Monica, He fired Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy all together. And what was interesting is they're sneaking back in, and Darcy hacks the system. She finds Monica Rambeau's medical files, and looking at her blood, her DNA, she's been rewritten on a molecular level twice. So Darcy doesn't want Monica to go back through the bubble again, because could her body take it? I'm wondering, is this the beginning of her having superpowers? The fact that her whole molecular structure, her whole cellular structure has been rewritten on a molecular level. There we go. I think I got the science-y words in the correct order that time. Now, here's what I really like about Monica Rambeau and why I already see her as a hero. Because she genuinely wants to get in there risking her own life and health to help Wanda. Because her mother has just passed, she understands the pain and the grief that Wanda is going through. So she believes that she can reach Wanda. So I love that, and I just see that as a heroic heart in her already. So there's a lot of interesting things going on the outside, but more interesting is when Vision breaks through the boundary. Oh my gosh, it answers the question. He cannot survive outside of that world. So there's something about being inside that hexagonal bubble. There's something about being inside that town that is upholding him, that is keeping him Vision, that is keeping him alive. And the moment he stepped outside of it, not only was it a great struggle, like he's running through molasses, like he's fighting to go upstream. It's like this vacuum, like it ripped apart his cape and pulled it back in. It's ripping pieces like of his body, of his skin off and sucking it towards the wall. And he's becoming more and more the dead Vision whose body was found in Sword. And he just sort of falls on the ground as parts of him are flying towards the bubble wall. Now, one twin has the powers of Quicksilver. That was interesting to see the twins develop powers. And the other twin has the ability, I guess, to see what his dad is seeing, hear what his dad is hearing, and so he alerts Wanda. And so Wanda expands the bubble, which is scary because it's transforming everything. All of Sword's base of operations becomes a circus under the bubble. And then poor Darcy is now under the bubble, and she was nervous about that because of how it rewrote Monica's molecular structure. So you could understand how Darcy would be kind of nervous going, oh, fudge, as the wall just comes in on her. And so it's interesting that Wanda just expand the bubble to save Vision's life, but she just encompassed more and more of the town. And the question being, okay, so like the clowns and stuff in the circus, they seem to be animated doing their thing, but since they are still technically the outskirts, will they go back to being like those Sims that have nothing to do, just standing there until Wanda, the star of the show, comes over? Who is Hayward and what does he represent? What's his agenda and what's he really up to? What is going on with Pietro? How awesome was that to see Vision do what he did? And now it's like, do we want the bubble popped? And what was cool was as Vision is dying, he is concerned that he's dying, but he's saying, help them, help the people. So he's crying out to help for the people and not for himself. So here's Vision not even remembering his life before or that he was an Avenger, but we're seeing him be just as much the hero and Avenger as he ever was. Dying, but crying out for help for the others. So it's very interesting. So what did you think of this 6th episode? My gosh. I mean, I've seen a lot of theories online. You know what? I avoid them because I am really liking this surprise. I am really liking not knowing what's happening. I'm really liking the fact that they're answering questions with more questions. And I really can't wait to get to this final episode and see what's going on. And I do hope when we get to the final episode of the season, the whole curtain is rolled back. I want the full revelation of what is going on here. So, what did you think of episode 6? Did you like it? Let's talk about that in the comments. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next WandaVision review, movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.